it, so you always watch your back. Hey everybody, welcome back to Data Fair. Thanks for having me, Abe, especially for organizing this. Really, that's great. Been meaning to give the talk for a while. It's exciting. I mean, and also one more caveat. I'm kind of the one who's used to giving questions, being a Jeopardy person, so please save questions for the end. Another caveat off the top. I did not win. I just want you guys to know that right away. I don't want this to be viewed as a presentation about how to win Jeopardy. I have now met people who have done a lot less than this and won a lot more money, and the opposite. I've met people who've done a lot more than this and done even worse. So this is just one method on how to study for Jeopardy. I'll talk a little bit about why I chose to do this method. I'll talk a little bit about what I got out of the questions, some of the progress that I made, some ways I made progress. Of course, we're going to talk about the results and the actual episode, and then just some cool stuff that happened to me afterwards. So, a little bit of introduction. My name is Zach. I've been on data strategy for about 2 years now. A couple fun facts about me are that my name is spelled C-A-C-H. Another one is that my name is spelled C-A-C-H. And then there's three that I think are really interesting. My name is spelled C-A-C-H. People get this wrong a lot. And I understand why, because when I sign my name on the podium, that does kind of look like a K, and that's what you are surely basing it on, but now you know. So now we all know, and now we know how to spell my name, and no one will ever get it wrong again. I'm so excited for that. Anyway, yeah, that was me on Jeopardy. Super common question I get a lot is, how did that happen? How did you get on Jeopardy? It's really straightforward. There's a test you can take on the website. It's literally called the Anytime Test. You can take it once a year. It is 50 questions. If you do well enough on that, which nobody's quite sure what that means, but people assume it's about 35 right. If you do well enough on that, you might get an email that says take it again. If you do well enough on that, you might get invited to a Zoom call where they make sure you can make eye contact and speak clearly, which I was not worried about personally. And then you're just in the contestant pool for 18 months where you just might get a life-changing phone call. And that's super exciting, except I kind of knew when I entered the pool, and this was like July of 21, that I wasn't ready. And that's because I had auditioned for Jeopardy before several times. I knew you never got your results back. So I would take to filming myself taking the test. And that's how I knew I only got 36 right, which means that everybody who was in the contestant pool with me either did about as well as me or better than me. About as well as me or better than me. And then I would watch the show, and there would be like some categories that I just totally blanked on. Some days I did great, some days I did terrible, a lot of variance. 3 days after I started watching to study was the first episode of a guy named Matt Amodio. Matt Amodio would go on to win 38 games in a row. He won like $2 million, $2.5 million in dominant fashion. That screenshot is from 6 minutes into the episode. He was a monster, and I was preparing to go against that. And what was I gonna do? Study? I'm not better at studying than nerds. That's insane. So I was gonna go on TV, and I would lose like really badly, and everybody would be watching, and they all know I'm a fraud, and no one would ever love me. So I had a panic attack for like a month. and then I pulled myself together, and I thought, okay, what can I do with the time I have to improve myself? What are my advantages over the standard Jeopardy contestant? And I could think of 3. First off, I have a lot of time. This is some privilege. I am an unattached single male. I do not have a family to take care of. This job maintains pretty standard hours. This is also 2021, so just coming out of the pandemic, not a lot of stuff going on outside of work. My girlfriend dumped me the day of the second test, which was intentional. She was really cool about it, and we're still friends. But my point is, I had a lot of time. Second off, cardio. Jeopardy takes 5 episodes a day. It is an exhausting thing if you win to keep going and stay up at that level. I found out my resting heart rate is 55, which is very low, but in a good way. This actually isn't going to come up again. I just wanted to brag. And the third advantage that I had was data! Data! Oh my God, what's up, Data Fair? Are you ready to see some numbers? I can't hear you. I said, are you ready? I see the audience is mostly, mostly people that have a pretty good data aptitude. If you're watching and really more into the Jeopardy side of things, this is going to be the most technical portion of the presentation. It is not crucial to understand this to understand the rest of the talk, but do your best. I think I'm speaking at a level that we can all understand. Worst case, if I lose you, I will give a pretty clear signal as to when this portion ends. So if you get lost, I'll bring you back. Try your best. Cool. So the first step of any data project is gathering the data. What I wanted to do ultimately was sort the questions by topic area, by category, to get a sense of what comes up how much. So, I had to get the questions. And there's a lot of ways you can go about that. There's web scraping, there's collection, there's archive, there's all sorts of crazy ways that people collect data. What I did was Googled the phrase Jeopardy question data set and downloaded it, which leads me to lesson 1 of data science. You do not need to overcomplicate things. Sometimes the simplest method is the one that works. You do not need to try harder than that. Ben Parker actually said this to me yesterday, and I showed him this slide. It comes up a lot. And we're going to come back to this, so don't worry. So now I have the data. This is the data dictionary. Like I said, I'm looking to sort the questions by category, by answer, by question. So the key information is going to be those things. Problem is text data. If you don't understand why text data is more difficult than numbers, I prepared the easiest possible example. This is not a trick question. Which of these numbers is closer to 50, 49 or 55? 49, yes, obviously. That's how numbers work. Yes. Nobody looks at 55 and knows it's got 2 5s in it, so it's closer to 50. Nobody does that. We all get how numbers work. This is a trick question. Which of these words is closer to the word sea? The word seal or the word ocean? Ocean. Well, yeah, if you're playing Semantle, yes, it's ocean. If you're playing Wordle, it might be sea because it's closer letter-wise. What you want to get out of the information might vary, and that's going to dictate the method that you select to analyze it. That's lesson 2. Methods are going to be dependent on goals. A lot of data science as well is just knowing a bunch of different techniques and applying them in situations that call for it. In my case, I was looking to sort a bunch of questions in the topic area. So what I wanted to do was something called clustering. Clustering is a unstructured machine learning technique where you give the algorithm some data. It's 2 axes. In this case, it's like just maybe height and weight, age and IQ, and you say, try to create the most coherent groups you can with the data you have. And there's different algorithms that have different methods of like what close means or how to sort. In this case, it's just like, you can kind of see that they're colored, like there's 3 different groups that got created, and you see that they're all kind of close together. Like that's what I was trying to do. But again, I don't have numerical data, I have text data. Real quick, anybody know this one? Anybody? Anybody? All right, time's up. Viva Las Vegas. Yeah, Viva Las Vegas. So this is an example. I'm going to go through to try to explain what I did, like a question from the data set and sort of process it so you guys can see like, like how to feed this into a clustering algorithm. So first off, the data points that I have aren't the length of the question or anything numerical. It's the individual words. So we can break those into individual words. I probably want all this to go together, so let's combine them into one list. If I sent this into the data, into the algorithm, right now, there would be a lot of noise. Because in language processing, in text processing, there's this concept called stop words. Stop words are very common English language words that don't really have informational value to them. This, and, it, me. So we got to get rid of those. In this case, it's this and was. Specific to my project, I added stop words such as Trebek and Jeopardy and like blank spaces for fill in the blank questions. All those, you just got to know the data and pick those out. We still have a problem, which is like, if I just sent this into the data, we've got some words that might not send it to a movie category, which we know it is. We've got Elvis, who was more of a musician. Las Vegas and Nevada, those are geography questions. 1964 is a year, maybe it's going to go to history. The thing about Jeopardy questions is that they always come in sets of 5. So I didn't analyze the data by question, I analyzed it by category. So when you throw in all of the questions from the same category together, of which you will have a set of, now you've got a lot more words that are like movie specific. It's a lot more likely that this old movie category set is going to get sorted with Oscars questions or highest grossing movies or Katharine Hepburn films or things like that. And then you do some, this is where I'm going to lose a lot of you. What you got to set up is something called a sparse matrix, where each row is a specific category. There were exactly 46,000 categories when I set this up. And then each column is an individual word. So each row is a bunch of zeros, maybe one or two, like a couple ones, where that word exists in the category. It's mostly zeros because, gonna lose you now, most words are not in most sentences. And if I haven't lost you yet, what I then sent into the algorithm was all of this data, this 46,000 by 11,000 matrix, and I told it create the 300 best groups possible, not in a two-dimensional space or a three-dimensional space, but in an n-dimensional space, where n is the number of unique words that appear in the corpus. And don't think about that too hard because your nose will start bleeding. But in the meantime, I would like to welcome back everybody who tuned me out during this portion of the presentation. We're done now. That was the most technical part. You've made it through. If you lost me, if I lost you at any point during this presentation, what happened was I created 300 groups of categories, of Jeopardy categories, 300 group clusters of Jeopardy categories that I then sorted those manually, which is, you know, still a task, but a lot quicker than doing it 46,000 times with a bit more to lead. Let's look at some of these clusters. This was a really good one. So the clusters got grouped together. We got like scary literature, gospel literature. Anybody know what would connect these categories? Edgar Allan Poe. Edgar Allan Poe is correct. Good job. Yeah, Edgar Allan Poe. Like this is very obviously a literature category, or a set of literature categories that got created by the algorithm. I mentioned that this was an unstructured algorithm, which is to say that I didn't give it examples. I didn't say, this is a geography question, find things that look like this, or this is an art question, find things that look like this. So sometimes the clusters were less good, and I would check my work by like pulling out that list of what the most common words are. I see people in the audience struggling trying to get why this got put together. You're not going to get it. This was not a good cluster. It was heroes named John, because those names were used a lot, and heroes were used a lot. So this kind of went everywhere. I had to give like a little bit more special attention to these ones that were kind of more interesting or more things that I wouldn't have thought of. But even still, like the really good Edgar Allan Poe cluster, there were some oddballs in there. These clusters were like on average about 150 categories each. And so like sports mascots was in this cluster as well. Anybody know why that was?
Poe is the Ravens mascot.
Actually, the Ravens have 3 mascots. They're all Ravens. They are named Edgar, Allan, and Poe. Yeah. So like, if this was for USAC, what I could have done is like tested different algorithms, tested different systems, like different clustering algorithms, tune the model in some way. At a previous job I had, we actually had an on-site librarian with a tech company. Like they had a person who was a library scientist for tasks like this to really fine-tune it. What I did instead was nothing, because it was good enough for my purposes. I wanted to get to the actual study, and it was like 80, 90%, you're good, 80, 90% accurate. As is, I would pick out things that I found that were less, you know, less than perfect and improve them. But like, it was good enough for my purposes. Know your audience, know what you're doing for it, and do not overcomplicate things. So this is the output of all that. I'm going to give you a little tour real quick. These are just every Jeopardy question categorized by topic. Abe, I need that back. First chunk, geography and history. About 25% of the questions are some form of geography or history. Text processing is a little bit limited trying to split these two out, because everything that happens at a time also happens in a place. So it's going to go to the same use the same general words, use the same different general terminology. But these were 1A, 1B, 1 and 2 in some order, the largest 2 categories that come up. Up next, about 20% of the questions, increasing in recent years, is pop culture. This is stuff that I'm really good at. This was probably my strongest set of categories. Film, TV. In a Jeopardy context, sports is pop culture. Sorry to some of you, good news for others. By contrast, about 12% of the questions are highbrow culture. Literature, opera, art. I do think Jeopardy has this reputation where they think that opera and art, and they come up all the time, and every category is like highbrow nonsense or ancient literature or classics. That's not really the case. But you remember that because it's hard, because I was terrible at this. I'll show you I'm terrible at this. But like, it's in there, it's just a little bit less common than people think. 10% is science. Science is broken down in a lot of ways because there's a lot of different branches of science. Subcategory, like I added the subcategories to the clusters when I saw something that was obvious. There were a lot of kind of obvious tells where like astronomy questions didn't overlap with anatomy questions or whatever. It turns out I was specifically very bad at animal questions. I never knew that. But just kind of different little branches of science, kind of tested different areas if I could, pop music versus classical music, that sort of thing. And then 33% is just kind of everything else. There is a baseline general knowledge you have to know with Jeopardy to get good at it. Like you do need to have a certain amount of knowledge, just kind of everything. These are the categories that are like 13-letter words or words that start with a J. In my game, I got a category that was things that are purple, which I didn't prep for, because what? But did my best, you know. So stuff like that, so there's baseline. This is cool, but like I'm not playing 1,000 games of Jeopardy. I'm playing one game of Jeopardy, and what I cared about is what am I going to see on my day. So I rearranged data to kind of look at like frequency, what comes up the most often on like what comes up every day, what comes up once a week. So I rearranged it, and like on the x-axis is how often it comes up. The y-axis, because I have the dollar figures attached to in the data, I added like what comes up in double Jeopardy versus what comes up in single Jeopardy, because double Jeopardy are more valuable questions. So you can see like literature, science, history, geography, they all come up either nearly once a day or more than once a day. So you know you have to study for those. Art is something that doesn't come up that much, but when it comes up, it's very valuable. There's one more dimension to this prep, which is what if I was really good at geography? Would I study geography? I would say no, like that's a waste of time. I'm already probably Jeopardy good enough at geography. So I took the classified questions, I took the sorted questions, and I would feed myself 50 question tests from each of these different topic areas to get a sense of whether I was, you know, good at something, bad at something. This is where I started. And the key insight for me was literature, because it turns out it comes up a lot, it's valuable when it comes up, and I suck at it. So, you know, to start, I would literally hit the books as well, you know, geography, history, science, those sorts of things, they come up a lot, other things that are valuable, but really like the key insight was like, get better at books. You may be wondering at this point, just kind of stepping back a second, how I came up with this. And the answer is thank you, but no, I didn't come up with this at all. This is Roger Craig. He was on Jeopardy about 10 years ago at this point. He set a number of records for largest win like dollar figures over like 5 games. He won a tournament of champions, shared this knowledge, and put it out there to the point where I did a blog post about this back in February after the episode aired, and a lot of very high-dollar Jeopardy champions reached out to me and said, this is very similar to what I did. So this is a pretty common technique. Like, it's pretty known at this point. Again, not the only way to go about it, but definitely something that's been out there. Because lesson 3, everybody, data is community. Data Fair. This is why we're doing this. We are all on Stack Overflow all the time. We are all, you know, checking each other's work. That is how we get better. That's why I put this blog post up, even though I didn't win it, because I wanted to popularize these methods, share them with people, let it be known. And it's like, even if you don't go on Jeopardy, like these are techniques that you can pick up and use in maybe a project of your own or a project outside of USAC. And then like this is actually really important for the part 2 of the data stuff, because about the studying portion of it. Because I did mostly study the normal way. I mostly, you know, just read questions and did Sporkle, went to the library and watched the show. But something interesting happened like a year prior to all of this. Jeopardy come back, it was October 2020, Trebek was still hosting, and this guy Colin Davey was a one-day champion. And he was a data scientist. He had a story, in fact, about how he did sports analytics. If you don't know, Ben Robinson, who's on my team, is also a big sports analytics guy. He's actually presenting about half hour about his work. And so I looked up Colin to see if they knew each other, and they didn't. But I found Colin's blog, and he had a post that was very interesting to me. And it was interesting to me because the title was How to Win Jeopardy Using Data Science. And I thought, well, that's interesting. I will put that in my pocket if ever I'm on the program. And then a year later I was. So here's that technique. I'd actually not really seen this before. This is pretty new. What he would do, he did the same stuff to start with that I already explained. sorting the questions by category, and then looking for the most common answers. Here are the things that come up the most just in these literature questions. Mostly authors, things like that. Let's use Stephen King as an example. Next step, what are the most common words that are used in the question when Stephen King is the answer? And also on the stop word beat, I would filter out things like book and author and things like that, because that's not really useful. But these are the words that are like special to Stephen King. Carries the book he wrote. He's the horror master. He writes about Maine. And then he took this information, took this big block of text, fed it into a word cloud. And what he did was automate the creation of flashcards where the most important words were on top. And the most important words were the biggest ones. So you could see very quickly what are the most important things to know about this person. What does Jeopardy care about the most about this author or this place or this city? And one of the cool things about this is that it can be automated. So I would feed in like 100 or 200 very common answers at a time and get a bunch of flashcards back really quickly. And this would work for like, not just like the common answers that I found, but stuff like countries, which have a very defined set. I could just feed in every country and get a flashcard for every country very quickly. This is also useful because Jeopardy is repetitive. They do repeat answers quite a bit. They do use the same people over and over. There are only so many famous artists. There are only so many countries. So there's a value, and they have tendencies. They have habits of what they consider to be a notable book or a notable piece of art. So by learning these, I had this really good sense of like, what is the stuff that comes up most frequently? As well, this is a use for word clouds, which is insane because no one uses word clouds. They're terrible. But this is a really good one. As well, so there's also this concept called a Pavlov in the Jeopardy context. Jeopardy does not have a lot of space. The questions go by very quickly. So they tend to use shorthand, tend to use the same descriptors for particular people or particular places, where there's only one Norwegian playwright of any note, is Henrik Ibsen. There's only one painter from Iowa of any note, and that's Grant Wood. If you can know those, you can scan the question, and by the time you're allowed to buzz in, which is very quick, you already can have your answer locked in, already ready to go. So this is a way of detecting those Pavlovs. This is a way of detecting those common things, common terms they use quite a bit. So I study, so this is like a big basis of my study. I study. I also do a lot of buzzer prep. If you were wondering, this is a $70 buzzer I got off the internet. There are many like it, but this one is mine. Without me, my buzzer is nothing. Without my buzzer, I am nothing. I did about 8,000 practice buzzes over the course of like July to the end of November. It was a lot. So I'm studying. One day I'm heading to visit some friends in Pennsylvania. I get a phone call. I say, hey, I'm driving, what's up? Woman goes, hi, it's Lori from Jeopardy Contestant Services. I go, is this the call I think it is? She says, you should pull over. And it was. So I study. I stopped drinking for the month, which included Thanksgiving, which, again, not going to come up again, just something I wanted to brag about. Fly to LA, do my final prep, and here's what that looks like. These are the individual topic areas that I enumerated, my progress over the course of the month of studying. All of these lines are generally going up. That is good. Especially art and literature, which are the two bottom points, they go up quite a bit. They actually get over by November. They get over that 50% line, and that's super important because in cases like Daily Doubles and Final Jeopardy where you are wagering, it's very valuable to know that you're more likely than not to get the question right, no matter what the topic is. So getting above 50% in every topic area was a milestone for me. If you summarize these by the weighted average, that's the blue line on this chart, which is just like weighting the more common categories more. How did I improve on those assessments that I made? As well, the red line is like just watching Jeopardy. The red line is just like how I did night to night. And both of them kind of tracked about the same, where I went from a little under 60% of the questions right to like 63, 64. If that doesn't sound like a big deal, let me remind you that that was of all of general knowledge. So like progress is slow, but progress is, you know, it's a big deal to move percentage points on this. We will get to the actual episode in a second, but something very funny happened that I want to share while I have a moment. My episode taped at the end of November of 2021. It aired in February of 2022. You've seen all of the numbers that I put into my prep. In January of 2022, Jeopardy began releasing numerical box scores of individual contestants' performances, containing not just the money that they won, the questions they got right, but the number of times they attempted to buzz in. The only way I can describe how big of a sea change this is imagine if NFL box scores one day included the thoughts of the quarterback. It is massive because it affects, because up until now, everybody thought that everybody knew everything, it was just a buzzer race. What we now know is that most Jeopardy contestants on a day-to-day basis know somewhere between a half to 2/3 of the things, where stronger contestants get into like 80%, which is very, very good. This would not have affected my prep so much. I mean, ultimately it would have been marginal. I'm not saying it wouldn't change anything. It would not have changed anything, but it's just like, what is the lesson there, folks? I couldn't tell you. I don't know, like that's weird. That's just wild that like everything changed right after I did all this. I don't know. Okay, well, let's get to the actual episode, okay? Yeah, no lesson there. Just thought that was funny. So here's how I did on Jeopardy. These are the 60 questions that I got. I marked in green everything that I either did get right on the show or I swear would have gotten right if I buzzed in correctly, or if I buzzed in time. The red are stuff that either I did get wrong or would have gotten wrong if I buzzed in correctly. And the stuff that isn't marked is just stuff I climbed up on, stuff I knew I didn't know, so I didn't try to buzz in. I bring this up because it kind of demonstrates this plan of like gathering breadth, gathering the easier questions, you know, across topics paid off. You can see that the top rows are a lot more crowded than the bottom rows. I successfully buzzed in correctly on 11 of the 12 categories. I achieved the breadth I'm looking for. In terms of volume, just to give it a bit more context, I got 23 questions right on Jeopardy. This is a histogram of everybody who's been on Jeopardy the past year and a half, the number of questions they got right on an episode-by-episode basis. The blue are people who have won a game, the red are people who did not. So by that metric, by volume, I am very much in this fringy end of people who got a lot right and still didn't win somehow. So that's one way to look at it. There's another way to look at it, of course, and that's by Coriat score. Coriat score is based on the difficulty of the questions you got right. And I got a lot of questions right. I got a lot of easy questions right. I kind of filled up on bread, as it were. In terms of the value of questions, maybe less good, maybe less impressive, and closer to kind of middle of the pack, I would say. So the question is, why did I propagate on volume? Why did I try to go for volume of questions over difficulty? Well, a few reasons. One is like, I feel like more basic knowledge is easier to pick up than more complicated knowledge or deeper parts of the topic area. And as well, daily doubles are very important in Jeopardy. Daily doubles being something where you can double your score very quickly. You get more cracks at fighting them the more you get right. So this is where I talk about the daily doubles that I found. If I found it! Sorry, I lost the happy, but the happy's back now. Yeah, so that's a bit unlucky. On the subject of luck, I want to say this explicitly. Do not confuse me saying I played well enough to win with I deserved to win or I should have won. I do not believe that explicitly. I know that because Emma, who was the champion coming into my game, was the champion for a few more days after that. She had a great game. I had a very good day. She had a great one. And I partially know that because of the box scores. I had 40 buzzer attempts, which is above average, which is a very strong number. I'm proud of that. She had 48, which to this day, which is about the past year of Jeopardy episodes basically at this point, past several hundred episodes of Jeopardy, is still one of the 10 highest buzzer attempts numbers on the show, and that includes some really strong champions. Speaking of really strong champions and my luck, my episode aired February 3rd. About a week prior to that, this woman, Amy Schneider, lost. Amy Schneider, remember how Matt Amodio won 38 games? Amy Schneider won 40 games. She immediately took that second spot in terms of longest streak behind Ken Jennings. She would have kicked my ass. I'm not going to front on that. She would have destroyed me. I looked a lot better because I was not standing next to her. I got a lot better shot at winning because I wasn't standing next to her. I am not complaining about my luck at all. And again, like, I was prepping for a champion like that. I was prepping for an opponent like that. And certainly on the knowledge front, Emma had that. And I hung in there. This is the flow of the game. And I had the lead at some points, lost the lead at some points, but hung in there and had a shot at Final Jeopardy. It was not a runaway game. It was not, my greatest nightmares did not come true, you know? So I would have won if I got the final right, as it broke down. I didn't. Let's go through that real quick. You may have seen this already. Just to recap, my thinking was basically, I don't know, Nehru is not American, so it's not him. I did consider Eisenhower, but just kind of felt like I would have heard an Eisenhower jacket. Eventually went Evie or Lindbergh. That was wrong. It was Dwight Eisenhower. And I bring this up, like, partially because we talk about my strategy, we talk about my planning. On the one hand, this is my card for Dwight Eisenhower. That was not a common question by any means. I was playing the odds. I got something that was a little bit on the unlikely side. Didn't work out for me, so it goes. I also bring this up because if you remember the question, I would have gotten it right if I just picked the most common World War II guy, which is to say I would have gotten it right if I didn't overcomplicate things. That's why I'm driving that home so hard, everybody. I hope you understand now. Heed my warning. Heed my warning. Keep it simple. Oh my God. Okay. So that's my Final Jeopardy. To finish up, some cool stuff happened to me afterwards. It's a really cool thing to go on Jeopardy. I'm super proud of it. Obviously, I'm doing this talk because I'm proud of it. I got some stuff out of it. Like, I didn't win, but I got some stuff out of it. Let's go through that. First off, second place, $2,000. That's really cool. You don't have to, no participation trophies. No. I did cash the check, but I don't want the trophy. So that's cool. I mean, they do, like, I love receiving $2,000 personally. It's great. Most of that went to travel, most of that went to lodging, but I did also get a free trip to LA out of it, basically, effectively. This is me and Heather, who was the other contestant that episode, hanging out in Santa Barbara the next day. That was fun. That was a nice day. I got overwhelmed, is what I got, because everybody reached out to me as this happened. It was insane to hear from everyone I've ever met. And then they all watched. Maybe it was the first episode of Jeopardy they watched in years. And then all their parents watched. And most of their grandparents watched. And all of their living grandparents watched. And it was awesome. And just like really reconnecting with people, like old teachers reached out. It was really actually overwhelmed by positivity. Some of you may have seen this. I got sent this by a lot of people, including people at this company, including the bar I had the watch party at. Basically, a woman sent a tweet the night of my episode that said, people from DC need to stop going on Jeopardy because my mom keeps trying to hook me up with them. And it was about me. It was about Zach from Jeopardy. I was the only man on stage that day. Yeah, we had a date. Cool. We had a good time. I mean, it was a blind date set up by a viral tweet, so like that's only going to go so well. But like, she's cool. We keep in touch. I got a hobby out of it. Like, I have hobbies is another one where there are a lot of people who have gone through what I've gone through, and now just have all of this knowledge of like random nonsense that you have no idea what to do with. So there's a lot of like truth. Like, this is not practically useful information, any of this basically. There's a lot of trivia leagues out there. There's like Learned League and School of Trivia, which is actually a really good one if you want to prep for a game show. School of Trivia is really good. OQL is a team-based competition that happens on Zoom. My team includes Colin, the data scientist whose work I took from earlier. I reached out to him after the game. I said, thank you for your work. He said, you're welcome. It was really cool. We talked. He started a trivia team. He said, do you want to join? I said, sure. His team is me, him, a friend of his, and two women who are in the contestant pool. They're not data scientists. They just emailed him saying, can I see the flashcards? On top of that, I got some friends out of it. I mean, like Jeopardy, there's a pretty good alumni community. I'm in a couple group chats. I'm in a couple like different spaces. 2 weeks ago in DC, there was SpokelCon, which was a trivia convention. I went to it. I had a great time. I knew a lot of people there. It was fun. Anybody notice what I'm wearing in that picture? Eisenhower jacket. Yeah, that's right. You gotta laugh, folks. You gotta laugh. Oh, yeah, I have no other choice. Okay. Final thoughts on this. Not at this job. At a previous job, I had a dispute with a supervisor over my use of a certain phrase, and that phrase was, sometimes the best you can do is not deserve to fail. And I believe that, especially here where we're working on behalf of another organization, requirements change, situations change, it's not always in control. The best you can do is be prepared and be ready and maximize your ability. From this data, from all this work I did, I don't have really any regrets about anything that happened, even though I lost, because I know I did everything I could. And that's partially using data methods and using the techniques from all the stuff I showed you today to, look at it in a certain way, understand the time you have, understand the resources you have, and answer questions that maybe you wouldn't have been able to answer otherwise. This is not the only crazy thing I've applied data to. I have other speeches proposed for Data Fair. I wrote a wedding speech in a Jupyter notebook once. I ran professional wrestlers. In our work fantasy group, I send probability odds for playoffs and things like that. It is surprising the things that you can apply data techniques to. And if nothing else, from Data Fair, if you walk the talk today, even if it's not for something USAC, if it is cool, but even just something you like, I encourage you to look at it from that perspective, look at it and use it to get better. Use it for, for something you like. And I really like this. So thank you guys so much for your time. I'm at 1:40, so I don't know if there are questions in the chat or anything like that. Otherwise, that's my desk. I do work here. I am happy to talk about this. My team knows I'm happy to talk about this, unprompted. Yeah, reach out, whatever. I'd be happy to talk about this. Message me on WebEx or whatever. Those are my socials that I want you to find. So, anything from the chat or anything from the room?
Yeah, Zach, what can you tell us about the television show 90 Day Fiancé?
So, Ben asked me what I know about the television show 90 Day Fiancé, and I don't think I'm going to try to pull the clip up of either the episode or the other thing I'm going to tell you about. In my game, I'm actually I'm on Thursday, so I'm sweating Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, watching all these categories about philosophy and Eastern European history come up, and I'm getting pretty intimidated. I come up, and the second category that I see is dating reality shows. And Emma does very well in that category, but one of the questions happened to be about 90 Day Fiancé, which is my sister's favorite show. A week before the episode aired, I didn't tell her about this. A week before the episode aired, she messaged me asking if the war in Ukraine would affect the show. So I have her fiance, who is American, tape her reaction to me getting that question right, and it's genuinely my favorite thing that came out of the episode. It is I'm smile, it's so joyful, it's so cool. Other people told me they were watching the show sports, and Jeopardy is a sport, don't get me wrong. Jeopardy absolutely is a sport. And just that was the coolest individual clip to see of them really getting hyped. Her and her friends who do not watch Jeopardy ever getting so hyped because I got the frickin' 90 Day Fiancé question right. Yeah, so that was cool. Anything else? Question about Jeopardy generally, the experience. A lot of this stuff is just, I skipped a lot of details that any contestant can tell you, because anyone can tell you, but if there's just questions about being on the show, what that's like, how tall my biolic is, I'm happy to answer any of those, either now or afterwards. So,
we have no questions in the chat.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Zach.
Thanks for your time. Enjoy the rest of the day, everybody.